Good morning. A plan for travel testing could be weeks away.
Morning.
Yes, good morning. Anybody who's been planning to go on holiday, and also the aviation industry, the travel industry, they've been waiting for the news that came yesterday. Good morning. The travel industry has been calling on the government's quarantine. June, almost anyone arriving from abroad had to self-isolate for 2 weeks, with big fines for anyone caught breaking the rules. Now, this had a massive impact on summer holidays and on the aviation and travel industry. So the government introduced travel corridors, places exempt from the quarantine rules. But the list keeps on changing, and often at short notice, and each UK nation has had a slightly different set of rules. No wonder then that it's been putting people off from travelling. Thousands of jobs have either gone or been put at risk. And the latest, only yesterday, Manchester Airport Group, which also runs Stansted and East Midlands airports, said more than 800 people may have to go. Airlines and airports have come together to call for testing when people arrive in the UK. A clear result would mean a reduced amount of time in quarantine. So yesterday, the government said it was setting up a task force which would consider when the best point to test is. But crucially, any testing would have to be private, so therefore paid for by passengers, meaning quarantine would remain for anyone who can't pay. What are the implications for the industry then? Let's speak with Karen. Setting up essentially a plan for testing. We'll get the results in November. South Korea have been testing at airports since March. I mean, do you trust that this is a genuine step forward? Isn't it? So Manchester Airport Group, Virgin Atlantic are saying perhaps at day 5 you would have a test that came back within 48 hours. Heathrow are endorsing potentially being tested pre-departure. What do you think? The only way to truly open up the skies is to remove quarantine entirely. That's not feasible, is it, without risking a massive spread of the virus? The Transport Secretary has said it's incumbent on the traveller to pay for it. It will be private testing, so it won't put any more pressure on the NHS. When people are worried about losing money around a holiday, having to shell out even more for the test might put people off travelling completely. It does feel like a step forward for anyone wanting to travel and for those industries that are so reliant on travel increasing. But some saying, we've already lost more than 5,000 jobs in aviation already. Is it too late?
Nina, thank you.
Good morning. A plan for travel testing could be weeks.
It feels like a while since we've concentrated on that. There was so much talk about, when you come in, when you leave, what you could do, what you can't do.
Can you be tested, etc. And crucially, that quarantine period that was introduced has put so many people off from travelling, hasn't it? Yeah, good morning. At the moment, anyone arriving back in the UK has to self-isolate for 2 weeks, unless they're coming from one of those countries exempt from quarantine rules. The problem is that keeps on changing. The list of nations keeps changing, and that puts a lot of people off from travelling altogether. Implications of that, thousands of jobs in travel have gone or been put at risk. The latest, only yesterday, Manchester Airport Group, which also runs Stansted and East Midlands airports, said more than 800 people may have to go. So airlines and airports have been calling for a testing system for when people arrive in the UK. A clear result would mean a reduced time in quarantine. And yesterday, the government said it was setting up a task force which would consider when the best point to test is. The rules could change within weeks, but crucially, any testing would be private and paid for by the passenger. So does all of this mean that holidays and travel could be back on the agenda? Lots of people hoping so. Simon Clyman.
Life is one long holiday for me.
Simon, yesterday, the announcement of this task force with a testing decision within weeks, it's not exactly a breakthrough that the industry was waiting for, is it? Does it feel a bit like it's been kicked forward again? Right, and also working towards that number of 5 days to do the test, have the results back within 7 days. You'd have to pay for it yourself. That's still so prohibitive for lots of people, isn't it? Just looking ahead to the October half term, Simon, what would your advice be to people wanting to get a bit of sun?
I'm desperate to get even more sun.
Have to wait and see until early November. In the meantime, do enjoy beautiful Morecambe. And just some news from EasyJet this morning, a bit like BA with the 747s. They're looking ahead to next year. So they've said overall, the last year, flights have been down by 50%. But what's interesting is looking ahead to January, February and March, they predict they'll be flying at 25% of capacity, so a quarter. And that is months away. That shows how big this is if things don't change.
Thank you very much.